The next example in this lesson is about buying or leasing a property. So the first option for Lance has for his business is he could sign a 3-year lease on office space, monthly payments of $2,000, a refundable damage deposit. Refundable damage deposit means you're going to get that back if you don't do any damage. So we're not going to count that in our expenses because we're assuming we get that back. Okay? But there is a penalty for breaking the lease. In other words, we have to look at the full 3-year lease. We can't just assume that you're not going to do the whole time. The second option is to purchase a house and renovate it to function the way you want it. So let's take a look at the two possibilities. Okay, so we're going to assume with the lease the rent doesn't change. Let's even write that. Assume rent like it doesn't increase. So pretty simple to calculate. You're going to go 2,000 times 12 months, and we're renting for 5 years. Okay, so what does that equal? That equals, sorry, not 5 years, 15 years. Okay, so 2,000 a month for 12 months times 15 years. This would be a cost of $360,000. Okay, nice thing about renting is something goes wrong, you don't have to repair it, the landlord pays for it. Alright, let's take a look at the buying costs. Okay, a couple things about the buying. First of all, it says the cost of the house is $285,000, but he's going to have to put a down payment. So it's not $285,000 where the mortgage is, you're going to have to come up with some money first. Okay, so let's quickly calculate that. If you have $285,000 and you want to multiply by 5%, there's going to be a down payment of $14,250. This is money you have to come up with. On the other hand, if I subtract 285,000, take away 250, this is going to be the present value. All right, it's only 270,750. Okay, so that's coming from here. So interest rate's 5%, compounded twice a year. We're going to make 12 payments in a year for 15 years, so 15 times 12, and we want to get to 0. Okay, if I put that in my TVM solver, it ends up with negative. So this means it's going to cost me $2,133.85 per month. Okay, that's for 15 years. So let's look at the total cost. So total cost is the down payment. So I'll write down payment. The down payment was $14,250 plus the payments. What are the payments? They're $2,133.85 times 12 times 15. So putting that in the calculator, we end up with $398,343.00. Okay, so that seems like quite a bit more than the lease. But don't forget, we own the house now. There's equity. So that's where we go to the second part of this question. So what are the costs of the lease over 15 years? We did that. What are the costs of buying over 15 years? Well, don't forget that, what does it say about the house here? 50% down. We're going to assume that it appreciates 2% yearly. In other words, the value of the house is going to increase. So even though we've paid that, let's kind of look at what's going on here. So appreciation means the value of the property is going to increase. So 285,000 is going to go up by 2% each year, so 15 times. So this means the value of the house now, after 15 years, is $383,572.48. Okay? That's what you would sell the house for after 15 years. Now that's pretty significant. If you now compare these two numbers, I just spent this over 15 years, but look what my value is. Okay? So this means the actual cost of buying is 300. This is what I spent, 398,343. Take away 383,572. You end up with $14,770.52. That's pretty cheap. If you divide that by 15, that's less than $1,000 a year of actual costs. Now, let's be honest, it's not quite that simple. There are obviously all kinds of things that could come into play, but that's a really big thing to consider. Typically, buying a property that appreciates is always a good thing, whereas buying something like a car that depreciates, not always a good thing. So what's your recommendation? Well, initially, leasing is cheaper. This is pretty typical, right? Okay. It's less because since the costs are fixed at $2,000 a month, that's less than the mortgage payment, right? And there are no maintenance costs, so it's all I'm paying is $2,000 a month. Okay, I don't have to come up with the down payment as well. There is no down payment. That's pretty important. If I don't have the $14,000 or whatever the down payment was, how could I buy? Okay, but in the long term, buying is much cheaper. Okay. Now I guess, again, I think there are other factors to consider. If this is a real life situation, we would have to talk about, well, how does this affect our taxes? You know, if we're showing that we're having an appreciating property, that's no longer going to be able to be used as a write-off against the income that I make with that business. Whereas if I'm writing off with a lease, I can say those are things that are expenses for my business. I'm not making that money. Okay? These are all things to keep in mind. Last example we'll do in this lesson is two couples made different decisions about whether to rent or buy. Helen and Tim bought a house, and Don and Pat are renting a house. Okay, after 3 years, both couples decide to move. What's the better deal here? Well, let's look at Don and Pat first. Don and Pat, it's pretty simple. $1,600 per month. So they pay $1,600 per month. They're going to do that per month for 3 years. So for 3 years, it's going to cost them $57,600 to live in this home. Okay, pretty simple to figure out. Helen and Tim, it's a little more complex. Okay, they're going to buy a house. They have to put 5% down. So first of all, let's figure out, what are we putting down? Well, let's go 5% of, what's the home? It is $249,900. So 5% of that is, let's quickly calculate that. So $12,495. So if we figure out then $249, take away $12,495, gives us, here's our mortgage. This is what we're going to borrow from the bank. Okay, now how long are we doing it for? It says the mortgage is compounded semi-annually at 5.5%. So let's put 5.5 semi-annually. Okay, it has a 20-year term and requires monthly payments. 20 times 12. So you want to get down to 0. What are my payments? My payments are going to be $1,624.78. So that's for the monthly payments. So let's figure out what is it going to cost for those 3 years. Okay, well, it's going to cost $1,624.78 times 12 times 3 plus their down payment. Okay, so that gives you a cost of $70,987.08. Now, that's not the final answer. Remember, we have equity in the house. We own part of the house now after 3 years here. So we have to figure that out. We have to figure out how much is the equity. Okay? So let's go ahead and try this. How much do we have in the house after we've paid for it for 3 years? So if we make 3 years of payments, right, it was 5.5%. It started at $237, and we made these payments of $1,624.78. Now we're only doing it for 3 years now, not the full 20 years. So this will give us what's the value of the house, or what's remaining in the mortgage, I guess we should say. We still owe $215,992.52. Okay. And now we need to consider, like normally we would just say, okay, the original price of the house was this, and we would subtract what is still owing, and this would tell us how much equity we have. The problem is, the house is no longer worth this. It's actually depreciated. Okay, that $249,000 house has depreciated. How do we do depreciate? Well, how much did it depreciate? Okay, let's go look. It says the house has depreciated 10% over those 3 years. So it's only worth 90%. Okay? And so then the house is only going to be worth $224,000. Okay, so now to figure out my equity, I'm going to take what the house is worth, take away what's still owing, and I find out that I have only $8,917.48 of equity. Okay, so now remember, this was my cost of buying the house for 3 years. So if I go $70,917 $987.08 and subtract my equity, I end up with $62,069.60. This is the actual cost of buying for 3 years. Now this doesn't include things like, if you had to do some repair on the house, doesn't include the cost of, lawyers for buying and selling a house. All those things, they're not here. So this is kind of a simple way of looking at it. What's the better deal now? Well, the people who just rented are a little bit further ahead. They had to spend less. Okay? So if we did a little comparison, we should say, since the house depreciated, it would have been cheaper to rent. Okay? All right. So what is the homework? I think I gave you the homework on the previous lesson, so you can go ahead and do that. Okay. Yeah. We'll stop there for now.